This film is for union members and about union members. These are union members: a steel worker, a baker, an office worker, a plumber, a bricklayer. This, too, is a union member, Screen Actors Guild. We regret to inform you she is not the star of this film. Indeed, she will not appear in it again. This is addressed to union men and women. You are in jeopardy. A crisis threatens you and your union. It threatens your job, your future, and your family's well-being. It is a quiet crisis. No violence is involved. No blood will be spilled. Yet in its silence, it has the intensity of open warfare. Like open warfare, it has the capacity to destroy. It is a political crisis. It began in the political arena, and in the political arena it will be settled for good or ill. It was here at the polls that it began, November 8, 1966. On that day, we lost our shirts politically. The statistics of November 8, 1966 speak for themselves. In the United States House of Representatives, a loss of 47 liberals. The great liberal majority elected in 1964, wiped out. In the United States Senate, a net loss of 3 liberals, still in friendly hands, but under siege in 1968. And in the 90th Congress, the swift pace of social progress stopped cold. Liberal programs gutted. War on poverty de-escalated. Resurgent conservatives in Congress flexed their muscles openly and forced one retreat from progress after another on the legislative front. And with this, a gathering storm for trade unions and the members they represent, the threat of a new dark ages for unionism. Quietly, with little fanfare, with little publicity, conservatives began to lay the groundwork for an all-out assault on the labor movement. Their battle plan: political victory for conservatives in 1968, legislative catastrophe for the labor movement in 1969. The shock troops, the hardcore conservatives in Congress. The supporting army, their allies on the outside, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and National Association of Manufacturers, already busy at the grassroots, bringing together assemblies of businessmen to mount the political and legislative push. And always in their corner, the right-wing extremists, the John Birchers and their fellow travelers, determined that trade unionism shall be reduced to impotence. What are they after? How do they plan to shatter the strength of our unions? For the next few minutes, we will examine their goals and the damage they would do. This is a bill introduced in the United States House of Representatives, first session, 90th Congress, January 10th, 1967, by Congressman Martin, Republican of Nebraska. It reads, H.R. 333, a bill to prevent the application or exercise of monopoly power by employers and labor organizations in employing or representing labor, to amend the Labor Management Relations Act, and for other purposes. In the language peculiar to Congress, mild enough and fair enough, or so it sounds. But when you cross the language barrier, if you are Joe Smith, steelworker, it hits close to home, and it hits hard. It outlaws industry-wide bargaining. It forces your local union to bargain with U.S. Steel or other giants of the industry without the resources, the support, and the know-how of your international union. And that's a mismatch. No union Davids will topple industrial Goliaths in this kind of confrontation. Wages, pensions, insurance, the grievance procedure, all will suffer. If you are Fred Jones, skilled tradesman, you get it in the neck too. It undermines your job, your trade standards, and your union by opening up the construction trades to a flood of non-union labor. Another threat, S-1353, introduced in the United States Senate, first session, 90th Congress, March 21st, 1967, by Senator Griffin, Republican of Michigan, and co-sponsored by 7 colleagues. A bill to amend Title 28 of the United States Code, Judiciary and Judicial Procedure, and incorporate therein provisions relating to the United States Labor Court and for other purposes. A United States Labor Court. There's a ring of fairness to it. Trained judges, impartial, making decisions on the merits of cases brought before them. But there's a hooker. The price we pay for a labor court is demolition of the National Labor Relations Board. The plan behind the labor court is simple and ominous. This is how the Union Busters script reads. 15 judges will be appointed to serve 20-year terms. They will be appointed by a conservative president and approved by a conservative Senate. There would be just one result. Years of turmoil and trouble for the labor movement. No recourse to justice for trade unions and their members. Other bills are making the rounds in Congress even now, quietly gaining support, awaiting only the final act necessary for success, a conservative takeover in 1968. S-1744, introduced by Senator Thurmond, Republican of South Carolina, May 10, 1967. A bill to limit and prevent certain concerted activities by labor organizations which interfere with or obstruct or impede the free production of goods for commerce or the free flow thereof in commerce and for other purposes. Translation: multi-union bargaining will be outlawed. No longer can a group of unions with the same employer band together in coordinated bargaining efforts. The employer will again, as in the past, pick them off, one by one. This one carries a high price. It can be measured in terms of hard cash. Before multi-union bargaining in the electrical industry, workers' wages and fringe benefits in recent years increased only 6 cents an hour annually. In stark contrast to workers in comparable industries who were winning 10 to 14 cent annual increases. The result of multi-union bargaining in the electrical industry. Wages and fringe benefits up twice what previous contracts provided. Cost of living escalators established. Inequities adjusted. Vastly improved pension, insurance, and vacation clauses. No wonder workers want multi-union bargaining. Small wonder the congressional conservatives and their employer group allies seek to smash it. S-1880, introduced by Senator John J. Williams, Republican of Delaware, August 23, 1967, to revise the federal election laws and for other purposes. The target, the AFL-CIO Committee on Political Education. The impact, prohibit COPE from collecting funds voluntarily contributed by union members and from distributing such funds to candidates for federal office. The consequence, shut off a vital source of campaign funds for liberal candidates. Other proposals abound. Compulsory arbitration to force free men and women to work against their will for wages they have declared and know to be inadequate. Prohibition of card checks and other informal means of determining whether a union is the choice of a majority of employees in a bargaining unit. And lurking behind the pack, ready to spring at the right moment, a federal open shop law, banning in all 50 states union security agreements, the coup de grace, the last decisive thrust. This is the arsenal. It is aimed at you and your unions. Behind the fog of language, it has one purpose only, to disarm working people in their relations with employers by weakening their unions. What are its chances? They're strong, very strong. Here's why. The United States House of Representatives has 435 members. Present balance on labor matters, only 180 certain liberal votes, an additional 40 probable votes to reach or exceed the majority of 218 and to stave off defeat on anti-labor legislation. But what if the roof falls in? What if conservatives make substantial political gains in 1968? H.R. 333 by Mr. Martin, Republican of Nebraska, a bill to bring unions under the antitrust laws, needed for passage just 20 to 25 more votes in the U.S. House in 1969. S-1744, proposed by Senator Thurmond, Republican of South Carolina, to outlaw coordinated multi-union bargaining, needed for passage just 20 to 25 more votes. The other proposals, compulsory arbitration, card check prohibition, a federal open shop, all are in range of passage with the addition of 25 or fewer conservative votes in 1968 elections. Are those 25 new conservative votes possible? Every forecast says yes, they are possible. While polls do not determine elections, they do anticipate them, and the polls are foreboding for liberals. While the headlines do not determine elections, they suggest directions, and the headlines are foreboding for liberals. Yes, enough new conservative votes are possible. So possible that the conservatives view it as a virtual shoe-in. But they don't stop there. They are out for bigger game than control of the United States Congress. They've got their sights set on the White House. The big prize is the presidency. With a conservative president in command, every single anti-union proposal we've discussed becomes a certainty, and that would be a mere beginning. Every mark of social progress chalked up in the past few years would be eradicated. For every hard-won forward step, 2 backward steps. Not one landmark of progress of the past 3 decades would be left standing. If we thwart them in their drive for the Congress and for the presidency, new steps forward, new landmarks on the long, hard road to security, dignity, and equality. One fact is clear. The threat is entirely political in nature. It can be met head-on only by a political response of unprecedented energy and imagination and dedication. You union staff members, are you working with COPE? Are you generating action among the members you serve? Are you making political action a priority commitment for 1968? If your answers are no, you're placing yourselves and the entire trade union movement in jeopardy. You union members, this is your battle. Are you working with COPE in your communities? Are you already at work for the 1968 elections? Will you help get every member registered and to the polls? Will you spread the alarm to your union brothers and sisters that the threat in 1968 is for real? And if we fail, this quiet crisis will explode into an irretrievable calamity. Your answers must be yes, or you're placing yourselves and the entire trade union movement in jeopardy. We can win if we have the will to win and if we work to win. In the midst of crisis, we have won before. Our unions were born in crisis. In crisis, they have survived. Despite crisis, they have grown strong. Once again, we confront a crisis, a challenge of the first magnitude. Its outcome will not be decided on the picket line, or at the bargaining table, or by union convention resolutions, or at union meetings. It will be resolved in one place only, here at the polls next November 5th. This film was addressed to union men and women. You are in jeopardy. A crisis threatens you and your union. It threatens your job, your future, your family's well-being. It is a quiet crisis. No violence is involved, no blood will be spilled. Yet in its silence, it has the intensity of open warfare. Like open warfare, it has the capacity to destroy. It is a political crisis. It began in the political arena, and in the political arena, it will be settled. Will it be settled for good or ill? The answer is up to you. 1968, labor's year of crisis.